Which choice logically completes the text? That's one of our tougher prompts because we need to understand the text well enough to know to be able to predict what might come next. So let's start reading. Archaeologists and historians used to believe that the Maya civilization during its classic period lacked agricultural marketplaces. One reason for this belief was that these scholars misunderstood the ecology of the regions the Maya inhabited. Marketplaces typically emerge because different individuals or groups want to trade resources they control for resources they don't control. Scholars seriously underestimated the diversity of the landscape and thus assumed that, well, a marketplace comes if you have resources you don't control, and therefore you want to trade resources you do control. So, if they underestimated the diversity, they underestimated the degree to which there were people who needed other resources. So maybe they assumed that everybody had all the resources. In other words, there was no diversity. So all the resources were just present. So let's look at A. Marketplaces would not have attracted many traders from outside the regions controlled by the Maya. So we weren't really seeing anything about outside the regions. We were just seeing that there was a lack of diversity, or that there was more diversity than was believed within the regions. B. Farming practices would have been largely the same throughout the lands, even if the crops varied significantly. Well, if there were a big change, why would farming practices stay the same? C. Marketplaces would not have enabled Maya people to acquire many products differently from those they already produced. They assumed there was less diversity. So I'm taking that to mean they assumed that everyone had all the resources they needed. So it would make sense if they're falsely assuming that the marketplaces did not enable them to acquire things different from what they already had. And D, farmers would trade agricultural products only if they had already produced enough to meet their own needs. That really just wasn't mentioned, whether or not they were able to meet their own needs. So C is in line with that last sentence because they are underestimating the diversity, therefore underestimating people's need for something they don't have, because certain people may have one thing and need something else. That was being underestimated. So they were underestimating the degree to which the marketplaces would not have enabled them to acquire products different from what they already produced. In other words, just talking about the diversity. So the answer here is C.